Hello, my name is Erica Donnison, and I'm one of the Alexander Studies online team. And this month, I'm really excited to be speaking with Abi Wright. Abi is an Alexander Technique teacher based in London, and she set up the She Stands project. She Stands is a movement founded on the idea that girls and women should never have to apologise for taking up space and raising awareness of the impacts of gender stereotyping on posture. And she also runs the wonderful Festival of the Girl. So my idea around this conversation was that it follows on from our recent posts about the neuroscience of postural tone, leading into explaining how Abi has put the science into practice by setting up She Stands. I then realised that Abi's work relates very well to the paper published in 2021 by Leslie Glover and Debbie Kinsey about the psychological and non-physical outcomes that can arise from learning and applying the Alexander Technique, which was episode 19 on the ASO blog series. So my questions to Abi relate largely to that paper. So welcome, Abi.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can we start with a bit of background? So why did you start She Stands in the first place?
I started it because I, at that point, had finished my training as an Alexander Technique teacher, which I did at LCAT in North London. And it was a really wonderful moment, actually, where I'd not long had my daughter. And it was that moment where it was our first baby. She was a girl, and my partner and I were thinking about all the things that we wanted for her as she grew up. But more than that, I was thinking about all the things that I didn't want for her. And a lot of those were, lacking in confidence, not using my voice, losing sight of who I am because I'm always people pleasing and doing stuff for everyone else, and this idea of sort of physically shrinking to fit into what is a patriarchal society that we're growing up in. And so I wanted to take my passion and drive for gender equality and bring it together with my Alexander Technique, which was a really sort of exciting moment. I was like, wow, I can bring together something I'm passionate about, something I really love and enjoy doing, and something that's had such a profound effect on my own life, my own confidence, how I hold myself. And that was how it began. And actually, initially it was called Inspiring Margot, the organization, because that was my daughter's name and I didn't know what else to call it. And I was like, well, that's what it's all about, so I'm going to call it that. But then I had a second daughter and I thought, well, I better not keep calling it that because she might get annoyed. So She Stands was what I came up with. And yeah, and that's sort of the reason why I started it.
So how does the Alexander Technique influence your work? I mean, you've mentioned that it's, something that helped you in the first place. And what part does it play in the She Stands offer?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the foundation of it. So, I mean, I started the Alexander Technique when I was 19 in New York, actually. I was living there and I was at a performing arts school and I always lost my voice. I didn't know for quite a long time that was also quite an interesting way to find it. But that's sort of how it came into my life. And, when I think about the training, the 3-year training that I did, just the impact it had on me, I don't think I'd ever put this 2 and 2 together, that how I am in my body, how the habits that I have, I really thinking about those habits of, how I have made myself smaller physically. And I see it, interestingly, I see it. I always think of this when I think about my 2. I'm sort of really trying to, show them that it is about this, how can you take up more space? And what you see so often is when you say, oh, let me take a photo of a group of kids and you've got boys and girls, the boys will be like this and go really, really big. And the girls will sort of like cross their legs a little bit and go like that. And of course, everyone goes, oh, aren't they sweet? So it reinforces it. They think, oh, it's really sweet if I go really small and cute. And of course, the habits that you start to realize that they're forming from such a young age. And this confidence drop. And I think when I think about how I could bring this, because initially it was starting, I was just working with women and a lot of them were in a corporate environment. A lot of these women have reviews and are told you just need to be more confident. And
Mm.
then they're sort of left to go away with that. And I think it's incredibly daunting to suddenly be told, well, you just need to be more confident. Where can you start with that? And so what I have found really works is I say, well, start with what you're doing with your body before you get into all the stuff that you're thinking about. And let's just think about, what habits have you got? Why might you have got those habits and built them up in the first place? And what impact they're having. And it's just looking at this idea of confidence from a different way. And I think it's easier to start with the body than go necessarily starting with everything up there. So really, I mean, the Alexander technique is absolutely the foundation of She Stands and sort of the foundation of everything I do, which is amazing because I don't think when you train in it, you ever imagine, I certainly would never imagine that it would be, such an impact on my life that would then, send me down this road. So it's amazing.
Yeah, we tend to come in to help ourselves, don't we? So
Yeah,
for me, it
absolutely.
was
It's
back
all about
pain.
me.
But yeah, yeah. And
Exactly.
then we go, oh, actually,
Yeah,
this could be really
definitely.
helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yes. How do you encourage your participants to realize that they might have more control over their lives than they thought? Because I mean, that's sort of what we're talking about, isn't it? Having more
Yeah,
control over things rather than being influenced from the outside.
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because on the whole, I find myself in a room of women, many of whom have gotten to a certain stage in their career and are potentially mothers as well. And so a lot of things are out of their control,
Mm. Yeah.
children, um, management above them, their own team. And it's quite empowering to be able to say to them, but when it comes to going through this work, and like I say, starting with the body, that almost is the one thing that you can have control over. And I think that, for them, it's almost, you can almost take a breath because you
Mm.
can think, oh, actually, in this madness of my life, where I'm running around, and the juggle really is a lot, especially when you've got younger kids, not even younger kids and older kids as well, but you've got this juggle with the corporate life, with the family, to know that actually there is this area that not only will really benefit you
Mm.
when you're able to start giving it a bit of space and a bit of time, but you can control that. And I think for some of them that helps them to move forward with the thoughts and actually put some time into it, because they're like, actually, this is going to benefit me, and not just benefit me in my business, in my corporate life, which I think a lot of trainings are about how to get ahead in the corporate field. Like, yes, this will benefit you at work, but this is going to benefit not only the rest of your life, but your family as well. And when I am in front of these women and they have younger girls in their lives,
Mm.
I always like to say that it will really benefit them.
Mm.
How you hold yourself, how you treat yourself, how you are with yourself around your children, and boys and girls,
Yeah.
is really going to have an impact on them. And I think that also gives them the energy to think, well, that's how I can help my children this way, by starting to do a bit of this work. It's gonna, yeah,
Mm.
benefit me. I've got control over it. And it does, it feels good, doesn't it, to take a moment and say, I do have some control and responsibility of this, it's down to me, not the rest of the world.
Yeah, and it's quite a revelation, I think, to people
Yes.
that that is actually a thing, and that
Yeah,
they can be a role model because they may not see
yeah.
themselves as a role model. They look outside for role models for their kids rather than being one
Yeah,
themselves.
exactly, exactly. And I think sometimes you think you don't give yourself enough time to work on things for yourself because you're so busy doing stuff for everyone else. But
Mhm.
then if you remind yourself, but actually, if I work on myself, this is going to have such a brilliant impact on my own children or
Mm.
the young people in my life.
Yeah.
It spurs you on, I think, to do that.
Okay, so what do you, I'm really interested in what you see in people. So, what do you
Mhm.
observe in your participants as they go through your series of workshops?
Okay. Well, I mean, it's definitely taking up more space. I always find the comment that I get the most feedback about is I talk about loving your armpits. You know, we talk about how we hold, we shrink, and these
Yeah.
habits that we have. But actually, I sort of say to, we never give any appreciation to our armpits. They're sweaty. We don't think about them. Maybe we shave them, and we're just a bit like, oh, but actually, it's like let's love our armpits.
Festival of the
Uh,
armpit.
it's all about the armpits. And then I think about LCAT, we'd get like socks under there, and I do that. I'll take in like socks or squishy balls to put under there and give them some space to have that. So it's really seeing a difference in how they hold themselves. What's lovely is seeing a difference in how they come in to the workshop. So at the beginning it's like they're zooming in, it's like, God, it's another thing I've got to do, but actually I've also got my phone and I've got all this other stuff going on, and you start to see over time, not with everyone obviously, but you start to see over time there's just a bit of, okay, they arrive, they give themselves a moment to arrive. Maybe they don't check their phones as much, they sort of realize the benefits quite early on, so they want to give it some more time.
Yeah.
And also more openness.
Mm.
And I think that's physically and emotionally, like what they're prepared to share when we're in groups, because it is groups that I run this with. Because sometimes it can be women from a corporate a business that have never potentially met before. And so at the start you do understand it's all a bit, they're holding back a bit, but that eases up, and I think that eases up as they start to release more in their body as well. They allow themselves to talk about it more and be more open about it and support each other. So it is, I think the initial thing you see is this space and allowing them to slow down as well. The one of the favorite things that I love to share, and I have Judith Kleiman to thank for this one, is the space behind you, thinking about that.
Mm.
And what's lovely is that it sounds really weird to them at the start. They're like, okay, I'll think about the space behind me, but this is a bit odd. And then as as time goes on and we keep sort of coming back to it, and they sort of allow themselves to really think about it, it's seeing that not only the difference in their physicality as they almost release back, but the difference in their voice. And they
Mm.
hear it as well.
Yeah.
And that's really great, because for many of them, they are presenting.
Yeah.
And so it's something different to think about. Okay, when I'm standing up here right before I'm about to present to this boardroom, I'm going to think about how I love my armpits in the space behind me, and then I'm going to get started.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's sort of what's the main thing is just them being themselves. I think
Yeah.
that's it. Allow them to be themselves and be present.
Yeah. And perhaps finding out more about who they actually are,
Yeah,
because they got the
yeah,
time and the space to do that.
definitely. And I think this disconnect between our brains and our bodies
Mm.
um, becomes very sort of, as we get older, I think it happens to everyone, but I think it especially happens to women,
Mm.
from the fact that, body image and how you're supposed to look is like grilled into us from such a young age. And of course, none of us look like that. None of us have a perfect figure, Barbie figure, whatever you want to look like. And so suddenly there's this negativity towards, this connection back in with the body. And I think women spend years of disconnecting, and it's giving them permission to, it's scary as it can be, to try and reconnect with your
Mm.
body, for sure.
I'm going to jump slightly to the question I was going to ask you later, because it came up in this one, um, about the creating a safe space so people
Yeah,
feel supported. And my question was around, how do you do that? Because it is so important. And this is
yeah,
what you've just said, having that space
yeah,
to allow people to feel safe to open up and stuff. So I'm just
yeah.
interested if you have how I mean, we all need to do that if we're, well, in my opinion, when we're working with anyone,
Yes,
but
of course.
particularly perhaps in a group.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you do that in your?
Yeah. It's sort of easier when it's a smaller group,
Mm.
because I think it's starting off at the beginning, explaining, nothing will leave this room. I think talking about the difficulties that I have struggled with, still struggle with. So I'm sort of laying bare how it is for me, and that, I still get it wrong and make mistakes, and it's not easy. And then I just think it's time and space. Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's very important. So maybe it's because I'm going in with that mindset. Like I know that they won't really be able to really let go in this space or allow themselves to enjoy this and learn from this if they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
So it's sort of my responsibility to help with that. So I think it's coming in as much as possible with my tools of thinking about the space behind me, giving myself
Yeah.
space, really taking my time.
Mm.
Um, and if they're going off in pairs and again they don't know each other and they feel a bit nervous, then going around and supporting them as much as I can to help start those conversations and getting them moving. I think that's the other thing. I think, if they come in to workshops and then you're just sat, it's sort of getting them moving. So it's difficult. I don't know if there's anything. I think it's just being very aware that I want to make it a safe space because I know it's the only way that I can learn.
Yeah.
And how I can help them do that and be honest about that and say them to them like I want this to be a safe space. Is there more that I could do to help make it feel
Mm.
safe to you? What does that look like? Because I'm also very aware that out that door is their corporate world.
Yeah.
So it's not even like they've come into a whole different space. Like their corporate world is just out there. So what can I do to help? And I think it's also understanding the people that are there, isn't it? You get a
Mm.
feel for how they're getting on and what works better. Yeah, I'm not sure if that really answered that question. But if you don't mind me saying though, I did just want to say here as well, when I think about safe spaces, you mentioned Festival of the Girl, and what that for me that really is shows the magic in these safe spaces where what we do with these festivals is we create it's a big space, but it is a safe space for girls to come and try things they've potentially never done before, which could be some sort of sport, or they could be changing car tires, or we had a wrestling ring last year, or they could be climbing in a tractor, and
Mm.
but also they could be doing VR and putting masks on, and you see some girls, and mine are quite like this. They have a tendency to have moments of feeling quite shy, and it's quite a daunting space when you first walk in. You can see them feel a bit tentative. But I think there's something in a room of people who just want to support you.
Mm.
And I'm going to say this, but it's I'm not saying because it'd be different if it was a room of men, but it is a room mostly of women who get why we're there and want to support these girls and show them what the world has to offer.
Mm.
That you see this change over the day of how these girls who are a bit tentative, by the end of it, are running over there and trying they're boxing over there or yoga over there or whatever it might be, the arts and crafts table, and it is because it's a safe space that you literally see them physically go from being that sort of, oh, I'm not sure, I'm tentative, to
Mm.
just bigger and taking up the room and doing stuff. So again, that's not really saying how we necessarily do it that well, but it's just it's I'm just so aware the importance of it. I think
Yeah.
I'm going to say something, and I don't know, it's just popped into my head, but I don't know if some of it's love, like I know
Mm.
for me the festival is a room of love. Like it is
Mm.
women who and men, sorry, that's unfair, but mostly women who want to love these girls and just want to make a difference for them, and that's how I feel for my daughters, and that's how I feel probably when I'm going into corporate. It's like, yes, I don't know these women, but I know what they're going through to an extent, and I know how hard it is. And I just want to be able to help change that for them a little bit. And I guess all of that comes from a place of love, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
maybe it's that.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I think also what people will pick up an atmosphere, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think that, just taking it, more Alexandry, I guess, it is a very positive intention. So the intention of
Yeah.
as long as you're clear about what the intention is, which is to create that and to support it. Yeah, so that all that thinking and all that feeling that you're talking about, it creates the atmosphere that people can then feel comfortable in. Because
Yeah.
it's something you can't quite put your finger on. You can't kind of go, oh, I'm going to create this, this atmosphere is going to be this. You have to have the intention and the real authentic intention behind it. And that's what people feel. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like there's
Yeah.
no kind of list of what you go through to create it. Yeah, interesting. Thank you. So going back to where I was before in my list, do you actually use hands-on Alexander Touch in your workshops?
So in the corporate ones, I don't actually.
Right.
I have done ones where they're in the more in the community, and they're specifically coming because they sort of really they want to understand a bit more about the AT. You know, you do get such an amazing response, don't you? For the like, even if you're just doing something, you're not doing a lot, are you? When you're in a workshop space, and maybe this is the first time anyone's been there, but it's just touch. If nothing else, you know,
Yeah.
people have an amazing reaction to it. I don't do that in the corporates, but what I will ask them to do is do it for themselves.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
you know, whether that's, you know, with a hand on the head, whether that's a hand on the heart, whatever it might be, whatever we're sort of working on. And again, I think that then comes back to this idea of you have control over how you take this, but it's talking to them about the power of this touch and the power of that. So it's not just like just stick your hand on your head and whatever. It's like let's think about our hands and then ask them to do it themselves
Mm.
and it's lovely.
Mm.
I think just everyone sort of comes away and is just reminded of how wonderful touch is, which I think when you are a very busy adult, you don't potentially don't really do it as much. You know, you don't you see, and I see this in my kids, you know, they're all holding hands and they're hugging and they're wrestling, you know, there's so much physical touch, which I think for many of us we lose. And I don't think you would necessarily realize the importance of it.
Mm.
So I think it's talking about the importance of it that I think has an impact
Mm.
about
Okay.
me
Yeah.
actually do it myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a theory in the Kinsey and Glover paper that I mentioned that talks about how discombobulation that can occur when we lose our familiar coping strategies. I'm wondering whether you see that in your participants and can you talk about perhaps how you deal with that?
It's interesting you say that because in the corporate, what I found, if I'm thinking about when I've worked in community spaces as opposed to corporate spaces, it's very rare. I think, you know, they are still, with the women that I've worked with, from the point of view of they are still in their office, you know, they've still, there is a sense of them having to be like, you almost, you know, that sense where you feel you feel this work and you feel emotional. Let's be honest, we've all got emotional doing it, haven't we? You feel emotional, and I think there is part of them that in that moment you can sort of see them being like, okay, but I actually don't, you know, this is going to finish in half an hour, and I've got another meeting to
Yeah.
go to. It's not like they're doing a full day, or it's necessarily a space where, like, if you are working one to one and they've come to your home, we've come to theirs. I think you can allow yourself to let it all go.
Yeah.
So as much as you've had and I've seen the sort of women where you can sort of see them being a bit like, I'll just sort of come to them and just allow, you know, just be like, you know, let's get a drink of water, let's find our feet, let's just take a moment if you
Mm.
need to, as opposed to necessarily saying, you know, they can let it out if they want to, but
Mm.
at the same time, I want them to feel confident as they walk out the room to go back into what they're about to do, if that makes sense. So I think when there have been those women that have allowed it to let go a little bit more, it has just been a matter of giving them a bit of space to just find themselves again
Mm.
and take a bit of time because like I said, it's a difficult space when it's just an hour
Yeah.
in the middle of the day to really sort of allow it to happen. And I think if you're someone who wants to learn and wants to do all that, but is also incredibly busy and needs to leave and get back into 500 meetings, then you're also going to have that bit of you that's like, I understand what you're saying and I'm going to give it a go. But at the same time, there's still going to be that bit of but you know, I'm going to walk out there and also do a presentation and go from there. So, and it's an interesting one. I've never really thought of it from the point of view of, is that also due to the patriarchal system where, you know, if you're a woman and you're emotional in the workplace, it is frowned upon. Yes, I'm sure it has a lot to do with us not wanting to just sort of let go and be emotional. And unfortunately, men struggling to let go and be emotional as well.
Mm. Same thing.
Is societal. So all of that runs very deep. So I think when I'm working with these women, it's trying to support them to have that space to open up, but to also feel confident that they are also going to be in a good place when they walk
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And again, that's the safe space, isn't it? It's enabling them to take that safe space with them in terms of
Yes.
their own control over, or feeling they've got more control over themselves, so that the
Yeah,
safe space
absolutely.
in the room kind of becomes their little bubble, if you like, potentially, which is quite a nice idea.
Yeah, the bubble.
Yeah.
Safe space bubble.
So that was all the questions I had. I'm just wondering whether you have any feedback.
I think there was a couple that I was reading through before this call, as I know you'd mentioned it, and there was two that really resonated with me personally. And there was one woman that had come in and she was having a very difficult time at work at that time. So it wasn't just the general life, it was that she was really struggling with work, and she really took to what we went through. She was very keen to learn more about the Alexander technique. And she did then go away and find a teacher, which is really lovely, because I think then to go from the workshop to then really making the time. But what she also found was it changed the relationship with her daughter.
Ah,
She said that she was more honest and open with her daughter with her own struggles, but how she wanted to change that. And that the first step was with the Alexander technique. She felt that that was a way that she wanted to change that. And she found that just they started to open up a bit more together. So that was a really powerful piece of feedback. Another feedback that made me laugh was a woman who was doing a huge presentation to sort of 150 people. She'd been really nervous about it. And she goes, I got up there, and right before I was about to speak, I just thought of letting go of my bum muscles. And then she's like, and then I was off. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And you know what I pictured in my head? I almost pictured like Judith Kleinman, like when she would sort of come up and sort of like gently just like prod your bum, just to sort of like remind you, like you don't need to be holding on.
yeah.
And and that was again a really powerful piece of feedback that I love. That I think there's the key, isn't there, in those like small things. I always get people coming back and saying they love the armpit love,
Yeah.
you know, the impact that's have. So it's finding those small things that they can resonate and feels easy to take away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's always good when I hear from those who've come that then look for Alexander technique teachers. That always feels like a real win. Maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't say win.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
For them anyway, for them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think this is it. What I'm taking away from this is that the Alexander technique underpinning your work is opening doors for people, which is, as we know, this is what
Yeah.
it does, and it certainly did for presumably for both of us when we started. And I think that's we
Exactly.
just continue to open doors for other people, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. I think we'll finish on an open door.
Yeah, I love that. Perfect. Thank you so much for
And
having me. Really.
yeah, it's been really interesting speaking with you. There'll be links to your website and all the lovely things that you're doing. And as ever, we have a comment section at the end, which at the end of the post, which people can put comments on, and hopefully you can respond to. So I'll keep you posted about that. So wonderful. Thank you ever so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate your time.